recording. Ah, I forgot
Got it.
that. But so you were
Got
you
it.
were ill for Christmas, was it?
Yeah. Not sleeping well, coughing all night. So yeah, I haven't had COVID. I tested negative for COVID, thank goodness. But this cold or whatever has just knocked me on my ass. And of course, Norm was sick last week. Like he had to travel for work for a week. Then he got back home and he was sick for a week solid. Now I'm sick and our lead time is completely fucked. So I don't know what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
We gotta figure that out. So, and we have ads that are already paid, so it's not like we just can't do a show. You know,
Right, right.
if there's a week in there where there's no ads, we could theoretically just make an announcement and say, "Hey, we're taking a week off." You know, but I can't do that right now.
Yeah, I used the
So.
holiday excuse for a few of those skips. But I don't have ads, so I don't have to worry about that so much.
Hmm. I should have I should have just planned. Actually, you know what? It's not too late to do it. Uh Thursday is the 28th, and I should just no shit, we've got ads. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. I was gonna say that would be the only good day to take off would be the Thursday between Christmas and New Year's and say, hey, it's the holidays, we're taking time off. But nope, we have two ads. Rocket Money and somebody else.
Yeah.
So yeah, which we still have to record.
No, and
So
in Japan, the holiday is still coming up since New Year's is the big one here. Christmas is
mm-hmm.
like everyone goes to work and school on Christmas, and they just
Yeah, yeah. Did you get
decon.
your KFC on Christmas though?
Luke did. He
He
got a
did?
giant
Okay.
bucket for the people at the main school. I don't
Nice.
actually like Kentucky, so I did. So they had gotten some like roasted chicken leg for or whatever from the supermarket, which I prefer
Okay.
anyway. No, we had a bizarre
Yeah.
Christmas dinner. It was like the roasted chicken leg, which makes sense. Then a very
Yeah.
Japanese vegetable soup, and then my wife was like,
Okay.
"Here's some spaghetti." I'm like, "Okay, that's an interesting mix of things." And then for lunch, we hit up the kaiten sushi, the conveyor belt sushi, which, if
Ooh.
you're curious, no longer just goes around with sushi on it post COVID, but it
Really?
now you use their tablet to order, and it just comes rushing at you on a line. They've changed it,
Oh,
so
interesting.
the
Interesting.
conveyor belt is still there, but everything is now like made to order, which
Okay. All right.
honestly seems better for the bottom line of a restaurant like that anyway. So
Seems better for the bottom line than if there are things that, yeah, aren't wanted. They don't sit out there for hours and hours, you know. So, yeah, I get that.
but yeah,
That
that
makes
was
sense.
my Christmas when my aunt sent me the. I'm not a giant gamer, but she sent this giant game, so I guess we're gonna try that.
Whoa. Hey, right on, man.
Wrecking the world,
Very cool.
and it looks like I lucked out. Jason, the guy that lives one valley over from me in Japan, that's on the
Yeah.
Discord.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Apparently, Amazon sent him 2 copies of Picard the Complete Series and said, don't bother sending it back. So he's going to send it to me. I'm like, oh, score.
Hey, all right.
So,
Hell yeah, man.
yeah, because
Very
I,
cool.
as much like Picard's not one I would like necessarily run out and buy
Yeah.
instantly.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. No, same.
I think of the new series, it's the last one I'd be getting on disc, but
Yeah.
but
Agreed. Agreed.
now I'm like, oh, I actually now if it's just there, I'm going to watch season one again, which maybe I never would have done. So that's
Yeah.
kind of. And
Yeah.
I also picked up at the used store. It's in Japanese, but I'm like, okay, I'll watch the Schneider cut because it was like $5 on Blu-ray,
There you go.
which has been on my computer for 2 years, but I never got around to watching it because it's like what, um, 4 hours, and but that's the thing with physical media. When it's just there, you're a little more
Yeah.
likely to throw it on. So
Yeah.
I've noticed a lot
Exactly.
of the movies when the MCU was still watchable are also cheap. So I've kind of been buying some of those because when it seemed like, oh God, do I have to buy these things forever? But now I'm like, well, Endgame's the end. I don't need to buy anything past Endgame. So so that works out.
Yeah.
I've already put the prologue on the board there. So I guess we'll jump into it
Sweet.
then. And now
Yeah, man.
I have a good hour, so we're not in a rush. But yeah,
Cool, cool, cool. Yeah.
when you're tied down by train times, you know.
I apologize. Wait, let me make sure my mute button is working here. Okay. Just in case I need to hack up a lung in between, I just want to make sure I cut that out.
Yeah, I get the plus on this one. I can do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. There you go.
I think maybe
Yeah.
it was last time you were on, but I got this mic, which I'm about to send back because I started using
Oh.
this new mic, and everyone's like, "Well, actually, the iPad sounds better." So,
Oh, interesting. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I have to like kind of lean over and talk into the iPad to do that, but
Yeah, yeah.
so I look weird if anyone's watching the video. I'm like over here, but yeah, sounds
Hey,
better that way.
it occurs to me that, let's see here. Okay, yeah, the keyboard shortcut for muting in Zoom it's Shift Command A, and that just seems entirely, yeah, so that just seems entirely too complicated. It should be M. It should just be boom, M,
That would
one
work.
tap,
The if that
That
mic
anyway.
worked, it has a mute button, but also like I got my heater on. I don't have to worry about that because this thing only picks up about 5 inches away. So
Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's very good. Cool,
let me
man.
give a 5 second gap, and we will bop on into this thing.
Fabulous.
Hello, welcome to Time Enough Podcast. It's where we delve into all the episodes of the Twilight Zone and beyond. As always, this is Matt here. Coming back for Mission Log is John Champion. Howdy.
Howdy, and not sure when people are hearing this exactly, but happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all the things, winter solstice. It's all right on top of us as of this recording.
Oh, what'd you do for the solstice? What did I do for a solstice?
I admired the shortness of the day and said to myself, thank goodness it's only getting better from here. Because man, in LA, when it gets dark at 4:30, that is just no fun.
Yeah, that's what we're working out and on my part of Japan. Coming from Atlanta, we'd always get like a little bit later light because that's way
Yeah,
off to that side of the time zone. But I guess
yeah.
you and I are now on the other side of the. Well, you're from Birmingham. You're always on the other side of that time zone. But
Yeah, but out here, it just feels so short, and I hate it because like one of the reasons that I moved to LA is nice weather year round, and you want to take advantage of that, like go out at night, and yeah, it stinks, but only getting better from here on out.
you could
So yeah,
trade in your time zone, but only one of us can trade in our time zones. Not
we can
both of us.
only one can trade in the time zone. It's going to cost you a pretty penny too.
But yes, it is the trade-ins today. So we'll bop on into that, and I will do a little bit of trivia here. The original air date was April 20th, 1962. 420 blazing. Script is a Serling. Elliot Silverstein directed. He was in for 4 zones and also helmed the classic Western comedy Cat Ballou, which scored a lead actor Oscar for Lee Marvin, who we've also seen in The Zone. Okay, practice my 30-year-old German classes here. Joseph Schildkraut played John Holt. His long career earned him an Oscar for his appearance in The Life of Emile Zola, and he was Odd Frank in The Diary of Anne Frank. In a bit of tragic irony, Schildkraut's actual wife died during production of The Trade-Ins, but he was considered himself a theatrical pro and soldiered on through it.
Wow.
My eyes.
Hey, by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt because I don't want you to get off track here, but I'm picking up some drops in your mic, and I don't know if you're picking up drops from mine. I assume you're editing this, so apologies for breaking our flow here.
No problem.
But yeah, I'm picking up some cuts in your mic.
Okay. Let me just squiggle my
Okay.
everything a bit. I have been having weird connection issues recently, so
Okay.
how's it going
Like
now?
right this second. Oh, no, wait, talk to me again.
There you go. Maybe they were a bit tangled there. Could have been part of it. How's it coming through
No,
now?
it's still doing it. It's still doing
Mm.
it. It's like, yeah.
Is it crackle or is it like an actual drop in volume?
It's a crackle, and that's making the words sound clipped.
Okay, I'm gonna turn down the gain on the
For what?
volume mixer a little bit, or but I know maybe this gain. How about this? It's a little
Talk
quieter,
to
I
me.
think. It's a little quieter now, but
Yeah,
is
I'm
that
not hearing
okay?
a crackle now.
Okay, it might
Yeah.
have just been too much gain then.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Well, if you don't mind, I guess I'll just go straight to the start of that trivia again and do the edit
Okay.
from there.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was like
Sounds
five
good.
seconds anyway, right? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds good.
Original air date was April 20th, 1962, 420 blazing. Script is a Serling. Elliot Silverstein directed. He was in for Four Zones and also helmed the classic Western comedy Cat Ballou, which scored a lead actor Oscar for Lee Marvin, who we've also seen in The Zone. Joseph Schildkraut played John Holt. His long career earned him an Oscar for his appearance in The Life of Emile Zola, and he was Otto Frank in The Diary of Anne Frank. In a bit of tragic irony, Schildkraut's actual wife died during production of The Trade-Ins, but Joseph considered himself a theatrical professional and soldiered on. Marie Holt was played by Alma Platt. She did not have many screen credits, but she will later appear in Night Gallery. Interestingly, she was actually 5 years older than Schildkraut and not 5 years younger as with the Holts. Theo Marcuse was Faraday. We've already seen him in The Zone with To Serve Man. His niche was getting villainous on 60s television, which he managed on shows like The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Batman, and for us Trekkies, the Star Trek episode Catspaw. Edson Stroll was the young John Holt, and he had already cheesecake for us in Eye of the Beholder. He also did that as the straight man in 60s Three Stooges comedies like Snow White and the Three Stooges and the Three Stooges in Orbit. He also got Swinging with Elvis and GI Blues. GI Blues is what happens when you eat too much cheesecake. And directly from the Internet Movie Database, the episode focuses on age and becoming young again. In 1962, the year this episode originally aired, the average life expectancy of a male was 66.9 years and 73.5 years for a female. Since we've been aging people in the Twilight Zone,
Wow.
I thought that was probably worth throwing in.
Yeah, yeah.
So this episode, it was your choice. Some episodes I kind of assigned to people. Some people chose it. You chose this one.
Yeah.
Where does this one sit in your mind?
Yeah, there's a handful of Twilight Zone episodes that have this really kind of romantic and tragic uh underline to them. And I gotta admit, like as many times as I've seen them over and over, they still get to me. They still have an emotional punch. I think this one less so than some of the others, but it's so straightforward, and I feel like you can really see the ending coming, but it still works. It's one of those where even the setup, the twist, like it's all so obvious. There's very little subtext to anything going on here, but it just works because it's efficient, it's well acted, you feel for the characters. Um, and yeah, yeah, I'm kind of a sucker, kind of a softie for stories like this. So that's why I wanted to talk about it.
All right.
Now that
Well,
said, there are problems with this episode. There are some problems in this script, which I'm sure we will get to forthwith.
yes, but
Yes.
before we get too deep, let me have you put on your best Serling or something else. I had people do Goofy and give us the prologue, please.
All right. Mr. and Mrs. John Holt, aging people who slowly and with trembling fingers turn the last pages of a book of life and hope against logic and the preordained that some magic printing press will add to this book another limited edition. But these two senior citizens happen to live in a time of the future where nothing is impossible, even the trading of old bodies for new. Mr. and Mrs. John Holt, in their twilight years, who are about to find that there happens to be a zone with the same name.
All right. I guess
I even love that opening.
yeah.
It's poetic. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
after doing the one step beyonds, many of which were pretty good when we were doing during the strike,
Hmm.
but one
Yep.
thing I definitely noticed was not as well written prologues for those. They
That
weren't
is the truth. Yeah.
they weren't amazing Criswell level bad, but they were not. They didn't snap, crackle, and pop quite as much as Serling's intros do. I don't know if he wrote all of them or if the uh, respective writers of episodes wrote those or what. I
That's a good question. I mean, and there are episodes that clearly Serling himself had more to do with the script than others. And I feel like even though, he obviously didn't write them all, and some of these terrific writers who were submitting scripts of the show, I wonder how much of a hand he had in shaping them. And then I just always wondered about the process. Like, does he get the script, read it, and then sometime at the 11th hour before they get ready to shoot, he's like, aha, now I know what the prologue should be. Like that's his way of putting the button on it, putting the icing on that proverbial cake.
Although by this time of production of the show, he is basically back in New York lecturing and
Yeah,
just
right.
flying over and doing like 8 of these at once. It's kind of fun to track when he's actually on set and when he's not watching these
What is
episodes
clear
because
that he's not. Yeah.
a lot of times
Yeah.
like blur 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 and then he's just like standing on a brick wall and you're like okay that's a week he was doing
Yeah,
knocking out a whole bunch of these but
exactly. Exactly.
um well I am wondering how much would you be willing to trade in for growing old personally because uh one of my podcasting buddies and you've talked to Luke, he's always like, yeah, I'll take my
Mhm.
robot arms and robot legs ASAP.
Yeah.
But don't mess with my brain. I don't want the Neuralink or something. So that's kind of his
I
take, which
mean, but look, like here's what's fun about this episode is that they very wisely just skip over the technology. Like, if you were to make this story today, you would spend an hour of exposition just going through the technology and trying to cram that down the audience's throat, and then at the tail end actually tell the heart of this story. So I think this one very wisely, like they don't get into it. It's just a salesman, like, oh yeah, it works and it's faster than you can even imagine, and you'll be fine because it works. And that's all you need to know. That's it. And presumably, as the audience, we just assume that it is some kind of a brain transfer into like into an empty vessel, like these bodies that are created. Maybe they're robotic, maybe they're organic, maybe they're a combination thereof, but you can reproduce every synapse, every neuron in this empty vessel, and that's okay. And leave the brain tissue of the original the way that it is, because spoiler, we we have to get back to that point in the episode. But the way it's presented here as just an easy, like pain-free process to go through, and they're charging 5 grand a pop, which from early 1962, that would, if you translate that to now, you're looking at still less than $50,000. You're looking at like 40 to $45,000. Worth it at 10 times the price. So I say, sign me up. If we can get to this point by the time I'm 79, done. Done, done, done. I'm ready to go. Take my
I
deposit now.
this might have been something that was like kind of in the air on 60 sci-fi. If you can ID this, that's great. But I read this when I was like 8 or 9. It was a like sci-fi for children, not well young adults or whatever, like the 60s version of young adults. And
Hmm.
it had people traveling like the characters who can visit grandma and they have a thing where you lie in and it's like you go in stasis and then your consciousness is beamed into a robot body halfway across the galaxy, right? And then
Cool.
and then when you're finished, you go
Yeah.
back to your original body. So you don't get
Yeah.
the does the transporter kill you worries, and in that one at least.
Well, okay, but here's the thing: is I love your note that you have that about does the transporter kill you, but this is I this is still playing in like a really weird gray area of that because you're not taking apart the original body. You're just presumably copying the neurons and the things that produce the experience of consciousness into this other host body. So I don't think they are killing that other body, although it's a very interesting choice of word. Remember, the salesman said that the other body, the original body, could be exhumed up to 1 week later, and that they could move the consciousness from the brand new, sexy young host body back into the original body. Um, I didn't think it was as much like it didn't bother me or make me question, is the original dead? The original will be dead at a certain point past 7 days. But this was more that weird thing about the point of view of consciousness. Because, like, if you're John Holt, your point of view has only changed in the respect that, okay, you're still in a body, you're still looking out through the eyeballs, you still see your wife the way she looked to you a minute ago. But if you look at your own hands, then your hands look very young. If you look in a mirror, you look very different than the way you looked before. So it really is just about the displacement of consciousness that I think would be very odd and take maybe some time to get used to. But you're only seeing that through your own eyes. You know, you don't spend every day of your life, every minute of every day looking in a mirror, you know, sizing up who you are and what you look like. So from a young John Holt point of view, he should be okay. He decides not to be okay with it, but he should be okay.
You know, for those shifts in consciousness, 30 minutes before he started, my alarm went off, and I was having some kind of vivid dream, which I instantly forgot about. But it was one of those things. Probably the alarm just started to go off. My dream did. I like pressed a button in the dream, and then the my real alarm went off. So, but it's
But,
kind.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I just going to say that was kind of a somewhat jarring little shift, a smooth, weird one, and I'm wondering if that's the kind of thing that we're looking at with this procedure.
Well, that's yeah. It seems easy. It seems painless. It seems, at least for this company, just like an everyday thing. Like everybody who works for that company has gotten past the idea of the weird, mind bleepery with your consciousness. But like we talked about this on Mission Log a long, long time ago, and I can't even remember in what context of what episode, but I found it really interesting to hear in studies of like neurology and the study of consciousness that there are people walking around on planet Earth today who do not perceive the seat of their own consciousness the way that you and I and the vast majority of other people do. To us, our consciousness exists behind our eyeballs, looking out into the world and controlling the meat suit of a body that we have. And if you ask, like, where are you? Where do you exist? Okay, well, it's the processes of the brain that are experiencing the world through your own skull. Yet there are people walking around for whom, like, the seat of their consciousness and their point of view is like their left thumb or some other weird place because somehow the neurons fired wrong in their brains when they were developing, and their their understanding of their point of view with the rest of the world is something completely different than what you and I expect. But they've adapted and they're able to get along and do things in the world just like you and I, but from this very strange position. And I think, like, okay, so maybe for a day, although young John Holt he's having a good time right away, but maybe for a day or two, it takes some time to get. It's like when Apple got rid of the button on the phone and you had to go to Face ID. And like it took about 3 days for me to get used to the idea of not pushing a button, but rather having to swipe up. I feel like that's what it would be like going from an old body to a young body and just having to change your perspective. It's like, oh damn, I keep reaching for the button, but it's not there. I just need to get used to it. That's all that John Holt has to go through.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you get used to doing something in a new way, and then you go back to the old way. Now the old way feels kind of weird, which might be the part
Yeah,
of
right.
the week here. Give it a week, because anything past that, it's going to be quite. I mean, in his case, he's being sent back into a body racked with pain or whatever. They don't get
Right.
specific what his problem is. I guess arthritis or something. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
because it doesn't seem
I
terminal.
well,
But
I thought he had cancer. I mean, he's looking in really bad shape, and particularly during that poker game, he just looks like he's about to fall over. I got the impression that it was something terminal, that he'd been fighting through this pain for a long time.
that might have been the case.
Yeah.
Um,
He
Now,
might have arthritis on top of it too.
this isn't quite a criticism of the episode, but I do feel this one is kind of in the shadow of a few years later. There's John Frankenheimer's Seconds, which to me
Hmm.
takes the basic concept and puts it in like a much more interesting. Well, I when I watched that movie for a podcast a year and a half ago, which was not my first time, I was like, oh, this is basically like better Twilight Zone the movie than Twilight Zone the movie was. So um, and I don't know if they base that. Have you seen Seconds before by chance?
No, no, I haven't.
I one I'll recommend putting that at the top of your list. It's a very old man who's contacted by this company where basically he needs to fake his own death, and then they turn him into Rock Hudson and send him up in Malibu as an artist. And
Okay, so I've heard of this. A buddy of mine told me about it, and it sounded awesome. And yeah, you're saying I need to bump that up to the top of my playlist, right?
yeah, so
Yeah.
it takes what's kind of nice, like the trade-ins is kind of a nice humanistic episode where
Hmm. Hmm.
Seconds is bleak and has existential terror and cons- conspiracy vibes. I mean, like old school 60 conspiracy vibes, that sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's a
Yeah.
Frankenheimer.
Right. Right.
So,
It can't help it. Yeah.
I mean, there's certainly some people may prefer this flavor too, where it's kind of chill and it's everyone's kind of in control of their situation in this episode. Like
Yeah.
the old couple gets to make the decisions. The guy selling it to him, though it says, according to my trivia, he played a lot of villains. He's not really villainous in here. He's just a salesman.
Right. Right.
I mean, if I'm a car
Although,
dealer and you come to buy two cars and you can only afford one.
but I do want to go back to the very beginning of the episode because there is something oddly dated in the setup here because okay, you have to get through a certain amount of exposition with this very high concept idea to get your 1962 audience on board with what's about to happen. But you know, you go right into the episode where this old couple are sitting in this place. I keep wanting to call it New You, but that's
The
not it.
New Life
Uh,
Corporation.
New Life Corporation. Yeah. So they're sitting there in New Life, and the salesman is trying to explain that this is a thing that exists that they can do. And I'm like, how the hell did they get there in the first place if this is the first they're hearing of what they're about to do? Because that whole opening scene, they just seem completely clueless about all of this. Like, what? You can move our consciousness to new bodies? What? And we'll live 100 years? What? What? And they go say, yeah, of course, we can do that now. We have the technology now. It's like, how did you two old people walk into this building and sit down with this guy and with $5,000 cash in your pocket? How did you get to this point without already knowing what this is? Like, yeah, I understand there might be details you don't understand, but they just seem completely clueless. Like they thought they were walking into, a dentist office or something else that they understood, but somehow ended up in a room with this salesman trying to pitch them this insane existential thing.
I bet there's some Apple Store employees out there that would be like, Yes, that happens. But yeah, it's a little weird. You wouldn't have you'd be in there without having your brain somewhat around the concept. And I
Yeah, like
was
do a little research on the internet first. Just Google New You Corporation before you walk in.
no, don't Google New You. That's going to send you into the Logan's Run
New
city.
life, new life. See, I'm gonna screw that up every time.
You get no new
Uh,
life in Logan's Run. It would have been kind of a brutally ironic name
there is
for
no
it there.
sanctuary. We know that. Yeah.
No, I went through the first time watching this, the first 5 minutes, I was just waiting for the other foot to drop down. I'm just thinking about what Philip K. Dick concepts coming through, what the salesman's not telling them, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But
Right.
again, it turns out that no, that's not where this episode's going. We're not going to that corner of the Twilight Zone this week.
Hmm.
Eye of the
Yeah.
Beholder, yes, we will, but not here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's nothing about this episode that is either somebody trying to screw somebody else. Although we can talk about the poker game, and I think we definitely need to spend a little bit of time on that. But there's nothing where somebody is trying to outdo someone else, and there's nothing in here where like fate is trying to screw the characters in this episode. These are all people acting of their own sort of interests. They're acting with a certain amount of free will that a lot of times in the Twilight Zone people just don't seem to have, because it's like either fate or somebody else is screwing you, and your future is sealed here. But in this has a much more gentle approach.
Even with the end where he decides to stay old, but I'm like, well, okay, he's young now. His wife's 5 years younger. Theoretically, they could save up for another year and just not do this at the same time.
That's what I'm saying. This guy, he's like young and hot, and he can just work his butt off, and I'm sure he could save 5 grand in no time.
Be a male dancer or a village person.
And all of the above. Yeah. I do think though that like there's one sort of again, I keep thinking, what if you make the feature length version of this, and particularly if you make it now? Um, there is a darker side of this story where it's interesting. They say that you can't go through this procedure by using credit. You have to pay up, right?
Mm.
And two things that I thought. One is that if you made this story now, or if you did the feature length version of this, you would have a world where everybody is selling everything they have and going into every bit of debt that they can possibly achieve just to have this procedure over and over and over again. And you probably get to a point where this is one of those like great medical disparities between the haves and the have-nots. And if you're one of the haves, if you're in the top 1%, 2%, whatever, and you can afford to have this, then you've basically got the ticket to immortality. But what that leaves behind is this huge population of people who can't afford it, and they have to suffer the indignity of not just being poor, but of living out a natural life and dying of old age.
Well, you're almost directly describing a more recent movie that I will not recommend as hard as Seconds, but In Time with Justin Timberlake. That might have been the Japanese title
Oh,
where
really?
everyone's
Okay. All
got
right.
a they got like a little display on their wrist showing how much time is left in their life, but everyone's gonna look
Uh,
25 until that runs down. So
see?
Timberlake, his mother is like Olivia Wilde or whatever, they're like they look the
Uh,
same age. And
oh my God.
some people are just 22 minutes, I gotta get down to the store and make a trade, whereas the elite live in the center of the city
Yeah.
with like a million years on their arm, like they're not thinking
Yeah.
about it at
See?
all. So
Yeah, there you go. There you
it's
go.
it's the guy who made Gattaca, which for me brought in some goodwill, but it's a flawed movie, but definitely a fun
Yeah.
sci-fi concept that's a little along the lines of this, except that nobody looks old in that world. Everyone is Uh,
Uh,
again, maybe the science isn't really like how does that actually work doesn't make any sense, but this makes more sense than
right,
that.
right.
There's another one that kind of takes something a little bit like this concept. Um,
Yeah.
the I guess it's 20 minutes and it's a 10-year-old movie, but the spoiler is, he's like running to catch up with his mom to give her time, and he's just 2 seconds too late and she dies. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like the
Great.
bus is late or something. It's the reason too. It's like, something ridiculous. But yeah, that's the kind of thing where people on the lower rungs of society, economically at least, would run into
Yeah.
situations like this. Like with the trade-ins, if he does have a terminal case of cancer, well, if he only has $4,000, is he going to make it that last month to get to the 5,000 and afford it?
Exactly. There's something really disturbing about this. And that's why I think you would just create this whole other market of people going into debt, doing whatever they could to have this. I mean, the most miraculous thing, like the thing that everybody in the world would want, which is another shot at living their lives, another shot at youth, not having pain, not having disease. Like, and even if there is that time limit on it, he said, what, 112 years, something like that. Like, of course, everybody, man, woman walking this earth, whomever, they all want this.
Can you do it again when you hit 112?
That's what I'm wondering. Yeah. See, it seems like that's the next thing that the New Life Corporation figures out. But then in 112 years, when you've burned through that body, okay, now it's going to cost you $10,000 instead of $5,000 to get
Hopefully
this.
inflation and right and wages have kept up, and yeah.
Right, right.
um in the case of this, of course, his desperation move is going to the seedy poker game, which I don't I feel like you could pawn some stuff off before you decide to go play with the mob or whatever. I guess
Sell
I
your
should.
look, sell your house, do whatever. 5 grand. That's all you need. Sell everything you own because you're about to walk out of New Life Corporation in hot new bodies, and you could go do anything to earn that 5 or 10 grand back. But I digress. You know that.
Yeah, here my specific note is CD poker dungeon always seems like a solid solution. Okay. And then he's got the worst poker face. You don't look at your cards and make the faces he's making, but he's not a seasoned player. So, um,
Right.
this,
Yeah, it's way out of step for him.
yeah, the more I think about it, that was like the dumbest possible move you could make, but maybe he's a little senile at this point.
Could be. Yeah, he's way out of his element. It seems like, and look, I don't mean to second guess Rod Serling here, but it also seems like, okay, the script had a second or a third rewrite. Maybe that scene is gone because maybe John Holt is trying to do something else to get that money. But because by the end of that whole sequence, he's just back where he started. And Mr. Faraday tells him, like, yeah, you came in with $5,000, you leave with $5,000. So he just burned through all that time without making any progress whatsoever. He just didn't lose the money that he already had.
I mean, this show has enough firepower in the writing that it really could have just made a 5-minute scene of him and his wife trying to work it out in a
Yeah,
conversation. I mean, that's
yeah,
something that's happened on a Twilight Zone episode before, and can
sure.
when we did Hocus Pocus and Frisbee. Yeah, no. It was 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock, which had
Okay.
what I think we decided to call the dumbest twist on the show. Um, but then up to that, the thing is there's these two conversational scenes which are like fantastic in that episode, and the rest of it's a little derpy. So
Okay. Yeah.
it was just kind of like, here you could put a scene like that in and it might be the standout scene, whereas the poker, I honestly like I almost forgot about that scene having watched this episode twice.
Sure.
It does seem a
But
little
I will have to
unessential.
hand it to him. Just dramatically, the poker scene plays very well. Like, I think it's well cast. I think Theo is great as our heavy, but then even the heavy has a heart of gold. Like, it was this really nice moment where I kept wondering, okay, what's going to happen here? What will be the reveal here? Is somebody bluffing? Will there be some altercation? What have? But no, but it ends on this really sweet note, um, with even the bad guy just realizing like we can't keep kicking this guy while he's as far down as he is.
Yeah, yeah. Also, just I guess it gives a change of scenery. I mean, if we're looking at it from a writing the script frame of mind, is
Yes.
you that
Yeah.
keeps it from feeling completely like a one act play, because that might
Yeah.
have been the feeling. Although again, that's we've had those in the Twilight Zone, and some of those are very good episodes. Looking at Nervous Man in a $4 room, where you only have two actors,
Yeah.
one set.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, and maybe that's what you're saying, where a rewrite or two could have sharpened it up, because especially in 1962, the concept is great. I mean, again, I'm seeing you're spewing off later works that I would think the filmmakers might have seen this at least once.
Right. Yeah, right.
Do you have any other big points you want to throw onto this episode?
Uh, Big points, not necessarily. And I think it it's strong because of the high concept. I think the acting is very good. I think even if it's a script that is imperfect, some of those imperfections are what make this even better. Like I said, I really appreciate the idea that they don't have to spoon feed you all the details about how this works or anything. Like, no, no, no. We just need to cut to what's important here. And that's who these people are and what their relationship is to each other. And it's nice to see an episode where we're not just like kicking people while they're down or waiting for like the punishment they deserve, because there's a lot of Twilight Zone episodes that are like that too. But like I said, I love a good romantic story like this too, and it came to mind finally. The Long Morrow, I think, is you've not gotten to it yet, but that's another one that is kind of along these same lines, and it is actually a very good parallel to this in terms of its building of relationship, building of these characters who you really feel for their personal and romantic lives, and I think that's what this one does very well.
I'm just
Now, look, I'm
staring.
not saying that I agree with all the decisions that are made here, because personally, I would say find whatever you can do, whatever means are necessary to keep that young, hot body and just and like live your life, and obviously help your wife too if she needs a young, hot body as well. Like make that happen. Work harder, John Holt, because
He's
Maria's
already
waiting for
retired.
you. Yeah.
No, my the only know I'm looking at here, this is a just a production observation, is that they're getting extras to stand very still a lot better at this point in the show.
That
There's a
was kind of fun. Okay, were there scenes though that it felt like there were some scenes that they freeze framed, but most of those were just people standing very still while the camera moved past them. And they're kind of weird looking, some of them, you know.
well, they have that frozen smile. I told you we went to the sushi restaurant on Christmas Day, as one does in Japan, and they had an
Yeah,
ad there. It was just a woman eating a piece of sushi and smiling. But I'm just like, in real life, that model was probably in that position for the past 5 minutes, and the smile on her
exactly.
face now like betrays that. It was like the
Just
most unnatural looking
frozen.
sushi eating. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
well, let's put the questions onto this episode. Who, if anyone, in this episode went through the Twilight Zone?
Um, I think only John did, because he actually got a taste of what that other life would be. And I still think he probably made his decision a little too fast in the end. I think from the time that they enter New Life, this couple has not yet entered the Twilight Zone. They're just sort of they're tempted with this very interesting idea, which again I think everybody, no matter what, would want. But I think John is the only one who actually goes through the Twilight Zone. He's the only one who gets a sense of what it is, and then he makes his decision.
I basically agree with you, but I am just going to throw on the maybe nobody does because this
Mm.
is a common technology in whatever world we're looking at.
Mm.
Um,
It's
and
so common that these people don't know what it is until they're sitting in the office to hear the sales pitch. So
I mean, you
weird
were
to me.
saying,
Yeah.
what would this be today? It would be a Black
Yeah.
Mirror episode with a very dark ending.
Yes. Yeah, it would. It would. I don't think I need that dark of an ending. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is more of like that show is more like here is a new technology and here is it going horribly wrong, or just
Yeah.
very existentially disturbing, which the Twilight Zone also does sometimes. But the focus in the Twilight Zone is reality warping a little bit. But I would argue this one's a little more of a technology thing because we're just supposed to accept this as normal in the setting of this episode.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the other thing that we don't get into here because it isn't that story that we're telling, but there is another version of this where this couple, the Holtz, um, kind of, maybe this is the worst thing for their relationship. And I think the episode is not making a statement on this at all because it is just this promise of, look, they're old, they're in failing health, at least John is in failing health. And what is it worth to you to be able to erase some of that and relive your life and spend all these years again with the person that you love? And that's a really beautiful story. The downside of that story is, okay, it's hard work to maintain that relationship for another 100 years. It's hard work when you've been given this, the young hot body again, and you've got to figure out what to do then for a living for another 100 years. It's like, there are all these complications that come along with it. I think that we as the audience walk away with the idea that, okay, here's this sweet couple who, for how long did they say they've been married in the episode? Like 54 years or something like
Something like
that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And lived this, from our perspective, very complete, very fulfilled, loving life together. But like, is there something really disturbing and I don't want to say distasteful, um, but maybe kind of dangerous and horrifying about having to redo that. Like, what if you screw it up the next time around? You know, like maybe part of the lesson here is just realizing, like, no, 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 we've had it good. Like, this is complete. We don't need to do this over again to try to somehow make it better. We've already won.
Maybe I'll phrase the second question a little bit differently today then, and just ask if John Holt made the right decision and or a reasonable decision because he deserves what he gets. He unlike most people in the Twilight Zone, he has
Mm,
full agency in this episode. What happens to him
yeah,
is his choice. There's no real deserve in this case. So,
yeah.
um, did he make the right choice?
For him, yes. I think, but I think he and his wife are very special people in the context of this because like in my head there is just a line of thousands of people waiting to get into a place that does this procedure that affords them this new lease on life, literally. For him, he made the right decision, and maybe for her, he made the right decision.
They could have watched Harold
um
and Maude, except it was 1962.
Yeah. I mean, again, like even if, to your point, even if it took a year to raise another 5 grand to do it, that's still a year that he could be young and healthy and getting his act together. And then his wife just, boom, just picks up right where they left off in that new body as well. I'm not saying I would make the same decision. I'm not saying that most people would make the same decision. I think that for him, for the kind of people that they are in this story, yeah, this ends the way that it needs to end.
In making the choice at around our ages versus making the choice around age 80 is going to be a very different situation. When you're 79, you might have a different take. Either way,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's a very different phase of life. So
Maybe they feel exhausted, you know? I mean, that's the thing I was kind of getting at. Like how much harder it would be to do it all over again. You know, that is, and Twilight Zone does this as well. Other science fiction does this as well. It's like, yeah, Fountain of Youth sounds great until you have to do the work. So,
where would you place this one on the tripometer from a 0 to 5 being very trippy?
I don't think it's particularly trippy. I mean, again, I think there's the promise and the intellectual exercise of the episode, but I don't think it's particularly trippy. It's like a 1 because John gets this taste of it. It completely sort of like realigns his outlook and his assessment of what's important. So that's his moment of trippiness, is being in this young body, but it doesn't last very long. Um, his trip is a short one, you know? So, yeah.
Okay. That's I think you're going with the
What about you?
experience of watching the episode. How trippy is that? I'm thinking more of the high concept of this technology, which and not how it plays out in the episode. I'm thinking of these later sci-fis I keep mentioning. So for me, I'm actually
Yeah,
going
yeah.
4 because I latched on to the concept and I'm sort of basing my score on that. So, but yeah,
Oh,
actually, I'm
well,
thinking about the experience of watching the episode is probably a lot lower.
yeah. But even then, it's like I don't know. Like, yeah, there is something about the technology that to us sitting here in late 2023 is very trippy because we want that and it seems so out of reach. At the same time, it's like, well, kind of as you pointed out, it is the reality of the episode. Just the reality is like, here's just a thing that exists that people have access to. And even now, we kind of look at it and go like, oh, okay, well, 100 years ago, you couldn't do hormone replacement therapy. We didn't have organ transplants. We didn't have, bionic devices and artificial limbs and things that, could be connected to a neuron. So we're actually living in a time where we're making these tiny little baby steps toward turning back the clock. It not in as profound a way here, but it is still kind of within some sense this reasonable expectation like, oh yeah, if we can only live long enough to get to that point where our technology is caught up with our desires there, like, yeah, we could get there. So is it really a trip? Like, it's not a trip in the respect that it's sort of supernatural or relies on magic or anything else. It's just like, yeah, here's just the natural progression of the technology. That's where we'll end up.
Well, in the 80s such a different place now. I mean, now we live in a world where you can go see
Yeah.
the Stones, surviving Beatles, and the Who at that age.
I
I mean,
know, I know. Well, and that is one kind of funny thing this episode is he's 79, she's 74, and in reality, he was about
6,
64 when
66 and
66.
71 were the actors' ages.
Okay, and they are both made up to look way older than they are. I mean, you can see the makeup, and they make them look about 112, you
Yeah, they're
know?
just that's why I brought the life expectancy. They're like way beyond the pale. They shouldn't even be alive anymore.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
now
yeah.
who directed the Ferrari movie? He's 80.
Oh, Michael Mann.
Yeah, Michael Mann. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
How did that go out of my mind? But yeah, it was like they're showing a
yeah,
picture of him. He's looking to the spry 80. He just made another major one.
yeah, yeah,
So 80's not the worst. I mean, I'm not necessarily looking forward to being like, oh crap, I'm 80 now, but it's not
yeah.
what it used to be.
Yeah, right. Right.
Um, I thought two things were interesting at the end of this episode. I was a little
Okay.
surprised to hear a quote from the Prophet in 1962. I felt like that wouldn't have caught on till
Yeah,
the later
right.
60s. Um,
Right. Yeah.
and I thought this was an interesting one to end with, like a mental health, like PA, and especially for 62, because we see that now where episodes might have that at the beginning, like, hey, trigger warning, or at the end, have a call this number thing if you're feeling, you know,
Right.
something. Whereas this episode
Right.
has that, and I was like, huh, that's interesting. They put it on this one, and it's 1962. So,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that was super cool.
I mean, hopefully that helped somebody, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess we will wrap things up then. What's going on in your new year? I guess I should ask. You can take that personally or professionally.
Well, I want everybody to do what I always ask of them, which is go to podcast.roddenberry.com, because by the time you hear this, the new page for genealogy will be up there with all the destinations as we are spinning that off into its own feed. Um, and there's just lots more to come with Mission Log, Trek Files. Mission Log Live will come back sometime early in the year. I think we're expecting season 5 of Discovery to start early spring. So we'll come back before that kind of ramp up when we get there. And yeah, other things that I don't want to announce just yet because still kind of waiting on dates and confirming stuff. But I also do want people to go to trektalks.net, because on January 13th, we'll be hosting Trek Talks 3, which is our all-day live stream telethon to raise money for Hollywood Food Coalition. And I do that in conjunction with the guys from Trek Geeks and Trek Movie, John Billingsley, Sci-Fi Sisters, from our own podcasting world, Norman, Jessica Lynn Verdi, Heather Barker, a bunch of us are kind of all pitch in and volunteer our time to make that event happen. So January 13th, trektalks.net.
Yeah, and the past couple years, y'all are on when I'm sleeping for the most part. So I've ended up taking the
Well, we planned
YouTube.
it that way. We always
Right,
plan it that
right,
way. We
right,
just want
right,
to make sure you're asleep. Yeah.
right. No, no, no. I ended up ripping the YouTube or whatever, putting that on my phone and having this insane like 8 hours, it's like an 8 hour podcast on your phone now.
It is. It is. Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, a lot of good stuff coming with that. Yeah.
as for Time Enough Podcast, we're on some of the socials, I guess, and you can support us on Patreon. Podcastio Podcastius. We also talk about really good and really bad movies at Films and Filth. I talk about Space 1999 on Podcast 1999. And you won't hear me on some video game ones where Luke loves Pokemon. Hyrule Field report about the Zelda games and the Game Show. Okay, hopefully that worked. The regular listener doesn't want to hear that every week, so I try and make it like exactly 30 seconds, so you can just like hit that button once, and,
Well
and then,
done.
then
Well
you're out of
done.
it. That's my mental clock. But hey,
Yeah.
I told you I pressed the button in my dream and then woke up, so I think my internal clock is running
That's what
pretty
happened.
solid these days. Uh,
Good job, man.
I also almost never set an alarm, so but yeah, when you're getting up a little earlier, it's sometimes a good idea. Or if you're 79, maybe you need to set an alarm. I just don't know.
Maybe.
Okay, I will make that the cut then. I still have plenty of time to get my train. So yeah. Thanks
Good.
for
All right,
popping in
man.
early. I'll leave this
Yeah,
rendering on my computer, but yeah.
no, my pleasure. My pleasure. That was fun, and it's a really nice episode. I was glad to get to watch it again. So,
I'll get you a link to seconds. I think it is on YouTube. Although there's
okay.
also a very nice Criterion version that I believe. So
Ooh,
there
okay.
are
Well, I've got the
multiple routes
Criterion
that way.
app. Yeah, I wonder if I could just buy it from the Criterion app then.
But yeah, I know when I watched it a year and a half ago, because it was on YouTube in at least DVD quality, if not Blu-ray. Because I have it
Okay.
on DVD. Well, there's so many things I have on DVD, but are in the States. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
that's
All right,
as a
buddy.
okay. I
Uh-huh.
will catch you for too long. Have a happy New Year then, and
I
hope
was
hope your sounds like your health is bouncing back anyway. But
well, I told Crystal that I'm gonna take a sleeping pill at about 8 o'clock tonight and just I just not even set an alarm. see how see how it goes.
That's
All
what
right,
you do in
buddy,
the holidays.
yeah, have